17 of the fantasy baseball season. And here's a few hitters I look to hit on waivers this week. The first guy's Kyle Farmer of the Cincinnati Reds. So Farmer, he's molded an everyday role for this Red team. And this Red team, they've been on fire of late here, winning a lot of ball games, hitting the baseball well. And Joey Votto's been a big part of it as well. So if you missed out on Votto, a guy I mentioned the last couple weeks to go out there on the waiver wire and get, it was a big loss, obviously, for owners who didn't go out there and get him after the tear he's been on. But anyway, Kyle Farmer, very valuable player right now in fantasy baseball. Qualifies a catcher, first, second, third, and shortstop. So you can play him everywhere on your roster. And especially if you got a lot of injuries and stuff, he's a guy that's very valuable. And right now the Reds are at least playing him every day. So on the season, 10 home runs, 35 RBIs, 39 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, 262 average, and a 327 on base. But the last couple weeks here for Farmer, he's been white hot, 3 homers, 6 RBIs, 11 runs scored, a 434 average, and a 483 on base. So with his versatility and him hitting the ball very well is Farmer, he's a guy that should be owned in more than 52% of leagues. And right now he's out there in still a great number of leagues at 48%. So the last few games for Farmer, July 25th versus the Cardinals, 1 for 4 with a run. July 26th at the Cubs, 2 for 3 with a homer and an RBI. July 27th at the Cubs, 3 for 4 with a run and a rib. July 28th at the Cubs, 2 for 4 with a run. July 29th at the Cubs, 3 for 5 with a run and a rib. July 30th at the Mets, 1 for 5. July 31st at the Mets, 3 for 5 with a homer and RBI and 2 runs scored. And then yesterday at the Mets, August 1st, 1 for 5 with 2 runs and an RBI. So right now, Kyle Farmer, he's going out there, he's getting the job done, and he's a very valuable pickup with him qualifying at every position in fantasy baseball besides the outfield. The next hitter I look to go out there and get this week's Rafael Ortega of the Chicago Cubs. So Ortega, with everyone getting traded from Chris Bryant, obviously, Javier Baez is gone, Anthony Rizzo, a bunch of guys gone from this Cub team. Ortega's going to get an everyday opportunity there for this Cub team in the outfield. Jock Peterson is well traded a few weeks ago. So on the season, 6 home runs, 15 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 15 runs scored, a 319 batting average, and a 369 on base. I know it's a small sample size in 113 at bats, but like I mentioned, he's getting an everyday opportunity. He's going to go out there and they're going to let him just rock, is Ortega. Cubs are playing for nothing this season. They traded their whole roster. So guys like this, they're going to see what they got for him for next season. So the last couple weeks for Ortega, another guy on fire, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 8 runs scored, a 432 average, and a 468 on base. And Ortega, the last few games for him, July 26th versus Cincinnati, 0 for 1 pinch hitting. July 27th versus Cincinnati, 2 for 3 with a run. July 28th versus Cincinnati, 0 for 4. July 29th versus Cincy, 1 for 3 with a run. July 30th at Washington, 2 for 4 with a run and an RBI. July 31st at Washington, 2 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs, a stolen base. And August 1st at Washington yesterday, an insane game, 3 home runs, 5 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. So right now, Ortega, he's available in 92% of fantasy leagues, and he's a guy you definitely can't ignore, and a guy you should get out in front of and pick up this week, because right now he's the table setter as well for the Cubs. He has power, obviously, he could steal bases, and he's a guy getting an everyday opportunity, and you can't go wrong getting him right now off your waiver wire. The next hitter I look to get off waivers is Abraham Toro of the Seattle Mariners. So this guy, he's been clutch as anybody in the major leagues over the last few weeks. And Toro, he got traded last week, obviously, from the Houston Astros here to the Mariners. And he's paying huge dividends in his time with Seattle so far. In the season, 8 home runs, 24 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 22 runs scored, 252 average, and a 319 on base. But the last couple weeks here, since the trade, 4 homers, 7 RBIs, a stolen base, 7 runs scored, a 324 average, and a 378 on base here for Toro. So Toro, if you need some third base help and utility help, he's definitely a guy to go out there and get. And right now, he's available 4% of fantasy leagues is Toro, and he's been a clutch hitter like I mentioned, and he's playing every day right now here with Seattle, which he wasn't with the Houston Astros, obviously. So July 25th versus Oakland, 1 for 3 with a homer and 2 RBIs. July 26th versus Houston, 1 for 3 with a homer and an RBI. July 27th versus Houston, pinch hit home run, a homer and 2 RBIs. July 28th versus Houston, a homer, 2 RBIs. He totally dismantled his former team with 4 home runs in that series. July 30th at Texas, 3 for 5 with 2 runs. July 31st at Texas, 1 for 4. And yesterday at Texas, August 1st, 3 for 4 with a run. So right now, he's a hit machine. He's been on a home run tear. And this is a guy that definitely, if he stays hot, can help you win weeks in your fantasy league and help you roll into the playoff race. So he's a key pickup this week. The next hitter is Almides Diaz of the Houston Astros. So Diaz, he came off the injured list a few days ago. And he's another guy who plays in multiple positions like Kyle Farmer. First, second, third, and outfield he qualifies in fantasy baseball. And right now, with his versatility and the numbers he's been putting up, he's definitely a valuable player to go out there and get his well on the wire this week. 6 home runs, 26 RBIs, 20 runs scored, a 297 average, a 353 on base for the season. And the last couple weeks for him since he returned, 3 homers, 8 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a 391 average, and a 417 on base. So the only down thing for him is his on base to average ratio. But everything else is great here for Diaz. And he's a guy that always puts the ball in play and hustle. He only struck out once now in the last 23 at-bats. And on the season, only 20 strikeouts in 138 at-bats. So that's definitely a plus as well with all the guys who strike out at a high amount of times here. To get a guy on your fantasy roster that puts the ball in play where anything can happen. So the last few games for Diaz, July 27th, 2 for 5 with a run and an RBI. July 28th at Seattle, 2 for 5, a run, 3 RBIs. July 20th at the Giants, 2 for 5, a homer, an RBI, 2 runs scored. July 31st at San Francisco, 2 for 4, 2 homers, 3 RBIs. And then yesterday at the Giants, 1 for 4 in that ball game. So right now, he'd had 4 multiple hit games in a row with Diaz since his return. And then the hit yesterday. So he's red hot, he's white hot. He's putting the ball in play like I mentioned. Then he's even showing some power. So with his versatility and his hitting the ball skills, he's a player that should be owned in more than only 9% of leagues. So right now he's available as Diaz in a whopping 91% of fantasy leagues. And he's definitely a big add this week, in my opinion. The next hit is Jorge Solaire of the Atlanta Braves. So Solaire, he got traded at the trade deadline from the Royals to the Braves. So if you want more insight on that deal, go check out the Jorge Solaire deal that I spoke about a few days ago on the deadline. So on the season for Solaire, the numbers aren't great, I'm not going to lie. 13 homers, 38 RBIs, 39 runs scored, a 200 average, and a 296 on base. So right here, he's hitting at the Mendoza line. But the last couple weeks, he's really broken out with Solaire. 6 homers, 8 RBIs, 10 runs scored, a 324 average, and a 432 on base. So we know what he's capable of. We saw him have a few seasons over 30 home runs. And we saw him have a season over 40 home runs in 2019 with Solaire. So right here, the power is definitely legit for him. And if he could just get things going and put the ball in play more, I think he's going to be better off for it. And now at least he's on a team where he's got some hitters in that lineup that could protect him, like a Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson. So he's around legit hitters instead of some of the guys in Kansas City where there wasn't much going on over there the last couple of years. So the last few games for Solaire, July 27th, 0 for 3 with a run. July 28th, 1 for 3 with an RBI. July 29th, 0 for 4 with a run. July 31st in his debut versus Milwaukee, 3 for 4 with a run and a rib. And yesterday versus the Brewers, 1 for 3. So far, in his first 2 games with the Braves, he's looked good as Solaire. And he's going to get an everyday opportunity with the amount of injuries over there in Atlanta. We know Ozuna is out for the season, most likely with his off-the-field problems and injury. And Acuna is definitely out for the season with the unfortunate torn ACL we saw a few weeks ago. Rosario in a trade, but he's still on the injured list, so we're not going to see him soon. And Jock Peterson, he's not going to play versus lefties as much. So pretty much Jorge Solaire, he's going to have an everyday opportunity with the Braves. And I think he's a pretty decent waiver wire pickup this week. The next hit is Patrick Wisdom of the Chicago Cubs. So Wisdom, he came up out of the gates firing the first stint here with the Cubs before they traded everyone. So they had trouble finding a place to play him. But now with everyone gone, Chris Bryant, obviously, Baez, and Rizzo, there's tons of open spots here in the infield for Wisdom to play. And on the season, 16 home runs, 29 RBIs, 31 runs scored, 3 stolen bases, a 268 average, and a 335 on base for the rookie. And the last couple weeks for him, 3 homers, 5 RBIs, a stolen base, 9 runs scored, a 279 average, and a 392 on base. So Patrick Wisdom, right now, he's one of the hotter pickups, in my opinion, this week to get on the wire. Like I mentioned, there's no competition over there in Chicago. He's a rookie. They're rebuilding, and he's going to get an every-day opportunity now to see what he's got. And obviously, his power is legit on the season with 16 home runs in only 168 at-bats. So the last few games for Wisdom, July 27th versus the Reds, 1 for 1 with a homer. July 28th versus the Reds, 2 for 4. July 29th versus the Reds, 1 for 4 with a homer and an RBI. July 30th at Washington, 1 for 3 with 2 RBIs. July 31st at Washington, 2 for 5 with a run. And then yesterday, August 1st at Washington, 0 for 3. So right now, he's getting the chances. He's batting cleanup for this Cub team. And he definitely could do damage and help fantasy owners. He's available in 72% of fantasy leagues. The next hitter is Brendan Rodgers of the Colorado Rockies. So Rodgers, another guy on a team that's going nowhere. But in my opinion, it's surprising that Trevor Story didn't get dealt. For weeks, we heard he was going to be one of the hottest names and biggest names traded at the deadline. But that didn't happen. Even though the deadline, we did see a lot of big names go in trade. So on the season for Rodgers, 9 homers, 26 RBIs, 20 runs scored, 270 average, a 337 on base for him. And the last couple weeks, 4 homers, 6 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a 316 average, and a 366 on base. So right here, Rodgers, one of the better prospects in their system over the last few years here is Rodgers. But right now, we'll see what he can do with a full-time, everyday opportunity. And the last few games for him, July 27th at the Angels, 2 for 5 with a homer and RBI, 3 runs. July 28th at the Angels, 1 for 4 with an RBI. July 29th at San Diego, 1 for 4. July 30th at San Diego, 2 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs in that one. July 31st at San Diego, 1 for 4 with a homer and an RBI. And yesterday at San Diego, 1 for 3, August 1st. So right here, he's going out there. He's showing some power. And if you need some middle infield help, he qualifies at second and short. I don't think it's a bad pickup at all. And like I mentioned, he's one of the top prospects in the last few seasons to come out of that Rocky organization. And he's available right now in 82% of fantasy leagues. The next hitter is Kyo Seeger of the Seattle Mariners. So Seeger, he's been around a very long time, and especially with the Seattle Mariners now. And on the season, 22 homers, 65 RBIs, 43 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 221 average, which is pretty much his numbers over the last few years, anywhere from 220 to 230 and a 297 on base. In the last couple weeks, though, he's been on a tear. 5 homers, 13 RBIs, 10 runs scored, a 283 average, and a 377 on base. So right now, Seager, he's going out there. He's not just hitting for power. He's showing average as well, and he's available in still a decent amount of leagues at 43%. So if you need some power, you need a third baseman, I don't think it's a bad ad this week for Seager. And if he goes into one of those cold streaks again, you just drop him. So the last few games for Seager, July 25th versus Oakland, 1 for 3 with a run and 2 RBIs. July 26th versus Houston, 1 for 3, a homer, 3 RBIs scored. July 27th versus Houston, 1 for 5 with a homer and 2 ribs. July 28th versus Houston, 1 for 4 with a homer and an RBI. July 30th at Texas, 1 for 3 with a run and a rib. July 31st at Texas, 2 for 4 with a homer, 2 RBIs. And yesterday, August 1st at Texas, 1 for 4 with an RBI. So Kyo Seeger, he's got 4 home runs in his last week here. So he's on fire, and he's a player that's definitely a recommended ad this week. And we know he's a hot and cold, streaky player, but right now, while he's on the hot streak, he's definitely worth an ad. The next hitter I looked at on waivers this week is Lamont Wayne Jr. of the San Francisco Giants. So I recommended Wade Jr. as a pickup last week, and right now, he's still available in a whopping 83% of fantasy leagues. is Wade Jr. On the season, 13 homers, 30 RBIs, 26 runs scored, 3 stolen bases, a .253 average, and a .341 on base percentage. So right now he's playing great baseball. I know he's banged up a little with the back injury, but the last couple weeks for him as well, 5 homers, 10 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a stolen base, a .282 average, and a .364 on base. So he's going out there and he's hitting for big power numbers. He's producing, he's driving runs in, and he's also a table setter for this Giant team, batting first most days. So the last few games for Lamont Wayne Jr., July 25th versus Pittsburgh, 3 for 5, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs. July 27th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 4. July 28th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 1. July 29th versus the Dodgers, 1 for 1 with an RBI. July 30th versus Houston, 0 for 2. July 31st versus Houston, 1 for 3 with a homer and 2 RBIs. And August 1st versus Houston, 0 for 3. So it's good to see him back in the lineup the last 2 days here was Lamont Wayne Jr. And he's a guy with legit power. And he's a guy that the Giants definitely believe in. They're batting him first each and every game. And right now he should be owned in more fantasy leagues. And owners should go out there and get him before he really breaks out. And it's too late to add him in most leagues. And the final hitter I looked at on waivers this week, Miles Straw of the Cleveland Indians. So Straw, he was putting up great numbers with the Houston Astros. And it was a little puzzling to me, though, that they traded him to the Cleveland Indians for a decent reliever in Phil Maton here. So Straw, he plays shortstop and outfield. And right now, he's going to get an everyday opportunity with this rebuilding Cleveland Indian team, even though they got a pretty decent record this season and have somewhat of an outside chance in that division. So on the season for sure, 3 homers, 35 RBIs, 17 stolen bases, which he's one of the fastest players in all the majors, 46 runs scored, a .261 average, and a .337 on base percentage. In the last couple weeks here for Straw, 1 homer, 4 RBIs, 4 bags, 6 runs, a .257 average, and a .278 on base. So right here, he's going to get the chance now with his new team, and he's already paid dividends here for this Cleveland Indian team in the first 2 games he's played. So the last few games for him, July 24th versus Tampa, 1 for 4. July 25th he didn't play. July 27th versus St. Louis, 1 for 4, 2 RBIs and a run. July 28th versus St. Louis, 2 for 5, an RBI, 2 stolen bases and 2 runs. July 31st at the White Sox, 1 for 5 with a run. And August 1st yesterday at the White Sox, 1 for 3 with a homer and an RBI. So right now, Straw's getting the opportunity. And he's a player that definitely can help fantasy teams, especially with the lost start of stolen bases and runs scored here. So I think he's a good pickup this week. And he's available in 63% of fantasy leagues. So that's a few hitters I've looked at on waivers this week in week 17 of the fantasy baseball season.